Hey, Goats, how are you? This is the Fantasy Goats YouTube channel podcast. It's your shepherd, that is the Commissioner Rhino, and we are going to go through one key fantasy football takeaway from this prior season that we're going to take over into this upcoming 2025. This is going to be the NFC South edition. Right. Well, Rhino, we thought to start with the NFC South.
Right.
Truth be told, there are no teams left
Exactly.
in the playoffs. So we figured we would go in. We're gonna go in strong with our first key fantasy football takeaway from this previous season, and that is going to be from the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson is your RB1 going into the season. At least he is for me, Rhino.
Oh, big time for me too. Big time.
He's the RB1.
Big time. In fact, he'd be if I was drafting, he'd probably be 101 if I was drafting first. And I'll tell you why, because he'll be going to a second season with Zach Robinson, and he could put. And you saw what he did this year with the numbers. He can do better after knowing the system. He could put up Todd Gurley numbers from circa 2018, 2019 when he went for 2,300 yards of scrimmage, 22 touchdowns rushing and passing. He was a fantasy beast. Won the offensive player of the year that year. Was almost won MVP. That's the kind of numbers he can do next year.
Well, yeah, that was a fantastic season, and there is certainly that possibility for Bijan, or he wouldn't be our RB1. But here's what really stands out to me. And yes, he did start off the season a little bit slow out of the gate.
Right.
We know that he finished for 1,400 plus yards, another 400 and change in the air. 14 total touchdowns on the ground, one receiving, and that was with starting out slow. I think there was there's a total of 7 games where he did not score. The rest were all multi-touchdown games. Now, who's to say that he couldn't score a few more times throughout the course of the season in games that he did not score in. So that's going to increase that stat, which is the stat that we care about, greatly, the touchdown stat. B, here's one that I really want to present to you and, of course, to the Goats. His long was only 37 yards. He only had 5 plays of 20 plus yards.
Yeah, which is surprising.
It's still not considered big play, explosive plays. If he only did 5 of those, there is more room. There is more meat on the bone for Bijan Robinson, right? There's more meat on the bone for this man. I mean, you just cited Todd Gurley. Let's fast forward even, another 4 years or 2 years ago. Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, not at all.
And lastly, we could also factor in, perhaps the Falcons go from 8-9 to now 10-7. They're winning football games or a few more football games. They'll be in more advantageous positions to run out the clock in the fourth quarter. There's that. How about the emergence of rookie Michael Penix?
Big time. That's a big one too, because
how about that?
He opened the game up a little bit for Robinson. That's why he started peaking the last few games, 4 or 5 games.
His last 3 games were a total of 6 touchdowns. Yeah. So yes, we've got that emergence of Michael Penix. Hopefully, we'll continue to roll on from there. And just again, the simple fact that it's Bijan. He's going into his 3rd season. He's bigger. He's going to be stronger. He's smart. He's going to be smarter now going into his 3rd year. The way he's already shown amazing patience waiting for blocks. This will be the takeoff. And lastly, and then we'll move on to our next key takeaway. Rhino, lastly, um, again, Bijan is just like he's one of these dudes that we've been talking about in terms of the generational. Well, the generational has arrived.
Yep.
It's
Go
arrived.
time.
It's arrived. Now, again, all these reasons and more. He damn near almost finished RB1 this season. I do not think Saquon would repeat that.
No.
Therefore, there's more room on the bone, more meat on the bone for Bijan. Wheels up. Next key takeaway that we also both agree on comes out of Carolina. Carolina, the 5-12 Panthers, and their starting quarterback, Bryce Young, will be. Now, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit first.
Right.
He's not a QB1 in the sense that we're not going to draft him in the top 12 quarterbacks taken out of the draft in 2025. However, my key takeaway is that he will be drafted, he will be rostered, and he could very well finish QB1 for your team next season. Rhino?
I agree, especially towards the end of the season. You saw the upside of him rushing too. He had like 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns.
Yes.
That's the element of his game that he didn't show last year or the beginning of this year. The best thing happened to him this year was being benched. He grew, and there's a lot more growth for him. His ceiling, he hasn't even reached his ceiling yet. That's the scary part. He has not reached his ceiling yet. You give him a legit wide receiver 1 and watch him go. They got the running game to support it. They got a good offensive line to support him. Maybe we'll start up a little bit, maybe, but he definitely could be QB1. He's definitely somebody you're going to draft. Probably, I say, top 15 is highest. Maybe
I was going to say that much like how Jared Goff was being drafted this past season, much like how even Baker Mayfield, who's in this division, was being drafted. There are the managers that do like to have the added protection of having a second quarterback on the roster, rather drafting other positions,
right,
and then running a potential knock-on risk of your starting quarterback, your drafted quarterback, going down, and then you have to go to the wire. So yeah, I would almost bank that Bryce Young will be in that type of category where you are drafting him if you are that type of manager that does want the backup insurance, or someone that you think could very well just unseat your starting quarterback, depending on who that is.
Then add in the fact that there's a lot of leagues out there, super flex leagues.
Well, then that goes without. Absolutely.
Right. So
absolutely.
He's someone that you'll be able to stick in the super flex and be, hey, I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
In a super flex league, 2 QB league, this is someone that is definitely being drafted. I would draft him in a super flex league. I may even consider drafting Bryce Young as my QB2 heading into the season, depending on who the QB1 is. Here are a few other factors that are obviously boding well for Bryce Young. A, his head coach.
Right.
Okay, so he benched his ass.
It's smart of him.
He benched him, and many of us, myself included, I'll be on record right now. Yeah, I thought that he's going to be left for dead, that they weren't even going to tolerate giving him another opportunity. I thought he was left for dead.
Yeah.
And until maybe the set of circumstances favored the return of Bryce Young by Andy Dalton being injured. Nevertheless, he returned. Not sure what took place behind the scenes. Other than maybe some good coaching of the young man in Bryce Young. And look, and you already mentioned it. towards the end of the season is where he started to throw a couple of multi-touchdown games combined with some rushing touchdowns. But before that, prior to that, you started to see it materialize. You
Yeah.
started. There aren't that many turnovers in this
No.
mix come midway through the season. Like when he made his return, they wanted to minimize the turnovers, which they absolutely did. And if he was giving you 201 touchdown, okay, now that's not fantasy relevant.
No.
But as we went on, rather just continue on that just you know mediocrity of like one touchdown here, 225 yards, no pick, which is not again not something that we want in fantasy.
No.
It started his production started to increase. Um, he's developing rapport with his receivers.
Yeah. The young receivers, that's a great take. And also I think the game maybe slowed down a little bit for him.
The processing,
Yeah, the processing slowed down a little bit for him. And
absolutely.
maybe Dalton and Canals were able to help him when he was sitting on the sideline saying, "Okay, what did you see? Tell me, this is what you look for." And it started slowing down. That's a lot. I mean, for any rookie position, that's a lot, especially a skill position like a quarterback.
He was telling
Especially coming out of college, because a lot of colleges will have 2 or 3 plays or throw up signs with a letter. That's the play you use. So there's a lot more development that has to be.
me. They say that the game is so much faster in the NFL than it is in college, but yet the quarterback has to has to slow it down in his mind. Well,
Right.
I mean, like again, this isn't no easy task. But again, let's maybe I don't know if they add another. Well, okay, let me run this by you real fast.
Right.
T. Higgins, he's a
Yeah.
free agent. He is kind of sort of being rumored into Carolina. You add a weapon like T. Higgins to the already existing wide receiver core of Thielen. I mean, I'm not whether he returns or not, but
Yeah.
yeah, a young Jalen,
Leggett and Cocker,
Coker,
Booker, and then
Xavier Leggett.
the up and coming tight end Sanders.
If you give this dude somebody like T
Yeah.
Higgins again, now that's just speculation at this time, adding
Right.
another wide receiver piece. But who's to say that they don't? Again, this division is still
Wide open.
it's kind of wide open. Yeah, it is. I mean, like the Falcons could easily flip that script from 8-9 to 9-8. And get the division or go to 10-7, or the Panthers maybe the Panthers get a wild card out of this division, and somebody else wins the division. Again, I think the future is bright, and
I agree.
rather again where we've seen quarterbacks, lately regress. Unfortunately, we don't need to name them, or we will name them in future episodes when we get into other divisions and our key fantasy takeaway, but rather regress.
Yeah.
Bryce Young has progressed, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, Bryce Young could be a QB1 next season. Let's move on. We already started to touch up a little bit on those Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and our key fantasy takeaway is that the Bucs have a wide receiver 2 cemented, and so do you. So do I in Jalen McMillan.
Big time. Is know what happened with him? I guess him is slowing down for him too. Was it affords them to let Chris Godwin go in free agency and save money for positions for offense or defense, because he turned up. He turned up and he showed out, man. And out of all the Washington wide receivers that would come out of college last year, he was one that I was the most hyped about. because you can see it in his college tape. So I knew, and then it just took a little while, took a little bit to catch up, and the injury, but midway through the season, slowed him down a little. But man, once he caught fire and he got Baker Mayfield's trust,
He
God,
he developed and earned
yep,
Baker Mayfield's trust as that second option in the
yeah,
passing game, and many times probably a first read as well.
yeah,
Um, Much like Bryce Young, obviously different positions, but much like him, Jalen, I think he in his first game actually did score, but then disappeared due to inability, lack of productivity, B, injury. Came back for a few games, then again got caught the injury bug again.
yeah.
Then coming out of their bye, which was week 11, I believe. So was it week 11? Regardless, coming out of the bye, his final 5 games, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
In week 14, that most important pivotal week 14 to clinch for many. If you started him, he got you 2 tutties there.
Yes, he did.
Whether I mean the situation sets up well for him. Now you mentioned dynasty a couple of minutes ago with Bryce Young as a QB too. Well, I mean if you're listening to this, goats, watching this, goats, if you're playing dynasty, you're definitely you definitely want to target Jalen McMillan because Mike Evans is no spring chicken.
No.
Okay, so the dynasty is an absolute green check mark buy. But for redraft, you want to know where do you think I looked at an early a way too early
Right.
2025 mock draft. Where do you think Jalen McMillan was going?
Third round?
No, lower. Take another stab before I tell you.
7th?
8th round.
Really?
Folks, if Jalen McMillan, a bona fide wide receiver 2 in this offense, with the trust of the quarterback going into his second year, if he's hanging around the 7th or 8th round, it's absolutely screaming value. I would say in the 6th round, it's screaming value. I mean, it's a win-win pick. You can't lose anything if Jalen McMillan were to fall that far. You either got yourself a league winner, or okay, the pick if something were to happen, whether it be anything in terms of like all the unknown, which is like makes us scratch our heads. But again, the talent is unquestionable. We saw it. He's got great size. He's got a great. Here's the other thing I really love, Rhino. There isn't a lot of like really like 1 yard touchdown receptions, like a bunch of Westbrook Akines, jump balls like that, and there aren't a lot of the deep balls. There aren't many like huge plays. He's a very good intermediate type of 15, 20, 25-yard type of route, and boom, touchdown.
And they use him a lot for the jet streams too, jet sweeps.
So
so that's added value, even more added value.
And the last thing I will add for Jalen McMillan and why we are absolutely drafting Jalen McMillan is again the fact of his production this season with the missed games. There isn't really anywhere else to go but up, especially in terms of receptions, especially in terms of yards.
Yes, okay. The missed games. Remember, he is fighting targets with Godwin, so he started getting more
target competition. Target competition. But what could you imagine if they let Godwin go?
I think that's what's going. I bet wouldn't be surprised if they did.
But now, okay, so now who else is in that wide receiver room besides Mike Evans? Who the hell?
Palmer, Trey Palmer, I think the name.
and my brother Sterling.
Yeah, and Sterling.
But in all honesty, all jokes aside, I don't expect Sterling Shepard to return to that team.
No.
I don't even know about Palmer. Yeah, there's no target. There's nobody else there. This is Jalen McMillan is poised for an even bigger breakout. This is someone that we're drafting.
Yep.
And Rhino, we have one more team left who were also 5-12. I can't believe this team, the New Orleans Saints, were 5-12.
No.
And I also had a hard time, as did you, I believe,
Right.
coming up with a big fantasy takeaway for this team. I guess for purposes of this exercise for the GOATs, the low-hanging fruit here, I guess, is Alvin Kamara. He's still like your third, fourth round RB2 pick. He's giving you still great value in terms of what he could do as a pass catcher.
Right.
But what else? He's not good on the ground. He really isn't.
No, it's not.
He's not getting you over 1,000 yards on the ground. So if he's not going to get you anything in the passing game, then it's a dead pick, Rhino. I don't see. Let me put it this way. All right, let me rephrase this. What I was about to say. There's got to be, in my mind, a better selection that would be going around where Alvin Kamara gets taken. Like, again, there's still going to be a strong percentage of fantasy managers, right, fantasy players that know the name Alvin Kamara, know or remember that he goes off for like 4 touchdowns on Christmas or 4 touchdowns here. And yes, we still may see that again at age 30, by the way.
Yeah.
But still, I mean,
that's a big one too, age 30.
If Alvin Kamara is in my lap at like the 3-4 term, I'd probably take my chances with another running back that's going in that area, or even or maybe another tight end, or do that whole thing again with Trey McBride. It won't be Dalton Kincaid this season.
No, it won't be.
I could promise you that. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, could you make a case for Alvin Kamara?
No, and see, this is where we differ too, is because the person I thought was Chris Olave.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
the upside of him is phenomenal, but then he's quarterback dependent. At least a decent quarterback, and does he make it back? Those are the only 2 people. They're actually relevant, or fantasy relevant on that team is Kamara and Olave. And Olave's still young. He's still rookie contract.
He's an asset, but, and I don't want to turn this into a but. We could do that on a live show. We could do that in another podcast. And of course I thought about Chris Olave, and there's just a huge red flag question mark that surrounds him. Unfortunately, and I mean, Alvin Kamara has survived a suspension, and he's been relatively healthy also, which is a great thing. So that's why that's why I would go with Alvin Kamara again. For me, GOATs, he's not in my draft plans. I can understand why he would want to be in your draft plans. I wouldn't be spending a 4th round pick on him if he fell to the 5th round, if he falls even later than that. If you're grabbing him as your 3rd RB at that point, then okay, because again, he still offers you tremendous value as a pass catcher. He'll be the recipient of many card checkdowns, because you know what, Ryan? I don't even think so many of those receptions aren't even by design anymore.
No.
They're not. So again, I don't want to turn this, and I don't think you want to turn this into like a referendum on teams. But that's just the state of affairs when it comes to the New Orleans Saints.
And see,
Yeah.
I think if Chris Olave is there around the 8th round, 9th round, I'd pull the trigger on him. Depending on, I would pull the trigger on him just because of his upside.
That's fair. That's fair. Look, I mean, again, if we agreed on everything, then we wouldn't be on screen together, and we
No.
wouldn't be recording this together. Now, would we? All right, well, goats. Thank you very much for tuning in, watching this edition of our key takeaways for each NFL team, all 32 of them. This was the NFC South. Be on the lookout. We will be back with another division, more key takeaways, and plenty of more content. Please give us a like, please subscribe, and we will see you guys soon.